is a presentation of Sertoba Media and Comey Media Incorporated. Well, we have a bricklayer deciding to paint all the sides of the goalposts. What am I talking about? I'm glad you're here. This is Total Football Talk. Welcome to Total Football Talk. Hard-hitting, grind, news, fun, and action, just the way you like it. I'm one of the hosts of this program, Cole Johnson, a.k.a. the Mad Scientist EP Extraordinaire, and the EP of all EPs. And I'm joined, as always, by the other co-hosts of this program. You know him as Mr. Commander's Gridiron Report. You know him as Mr. In-Or-Out Sports Debate. You even know him as D. Willie in the Evening. You might not know him with this new nickname, but it's soon to be labeled the White Jackie Robinson of the crew. Ladies and gentlemen, your friend and mine, my brother and mine, D. Willie, a.k.a. Drew Willingham.
What's happening, everybody? Glad to be back here today. Yes, hashtag WJR. That is what we are doing here with the nicknames. Apparently, because, Cole and I have been talking about that White Jackie Robinson, but y'all about to find out here real soon.
That's right. So they are. And, we have a huge slate to break down and even review for week 11, but we're going to review week 10 for right now. Opening drive, please.
All right, let's go. We got trips, right? At 42, 989. On two. Ready? Great.
All right, so for the upcoming week's games, games we're going to review, the following teams did not have a game. They were on a bye, which would be the Browns, the Packers, the Raiders, and the Seahawks. So, yes, Cleveland, Green Bay, Las Vegas, and Seattle, they were sitting home on week 10. But the other 28 teams were not. And, we'll get this out the way. Yes, there was a Monday Night Football game that took place last week. It went overtime. Actually, it's one of the better matches of the year. Unfortunately, the Buccaneers, they forced overtime action against the Chiefs, but they could not unseat the champs. 30-24 was the final score. Actually, Mahomes actually had a pretty good game. And in his first ever start for the Chiefs, looks like DeAndre Hopkins may have found a fit. 8 receptions, 86 yards, and a couple touchdowns. So it looks like everything looks good for him. And we'll see how well he looks now, because we'll review the next game they played yesterday. And speaking of yesterday's set of games, let's go there right now. All right, so we had this, Lord have mercy. I had a game in Germany. Good Lord. It was between the Panthers and the Giants. Yes, it ended up being a pretty good game. The Giants forced overtime, but unfortunately, they did not pull it out, unfortunately, because one Mr. Tyrone Tracy wet the bed and did a It leaded the Panthers to a 2017 overtime victory. Bryce Young, I'm happy for him. 15 of 25, 126 yards and a touchdown, 2 carries for 30 yards as well. And then Chuba Hubbard, who signed a contract extension, he awarded the team with probably the best effort of his career. 28 carries, 153 yards, and a touchdown. He had 4 receptions of 16 yards. And unfortunately, because he had an injury scare, he did but that 153-yard performance, along with Bryce Young's 30, that aided in the 188-yard rushing attack on the ground for the Panthers. On defense, you had Xavier Woods, who gave you a pick. The same thing with Josie Jewell of Daniel Jones, who was 22 of 37, 190 yards, along with those 2 picks. He also carried the ball 7 times for 26 yards. He had a rushing touchdown as well. Now, I mentioned Tyrone Tracy. Along with that, in overtime, he had 18 carries, 103 yards. He did have a touchdown and a reception for a yard. And 103 yards, he paced the effort for the Giants offense on the ground, 167 yards on the ground for them. Your thoughts on the Munich game between these two teams?
This game didn't really have much action until the second half. Looking at it for what it is, it was absolutely, one matchup between two of these types of teams right here. 2 dumpster Pelican teams is what was facing off in Germany. And it didn't really matter who took it, whether you were playing or whether you were watching it, no matter who you were pulling for, everybody took this. Yes, the action didn't really come until the second half, but regardless of who you were pulling for, you obviously took the L with the amount of time that was wasted, especially when you think of the fact that it went into overtime, so that it got dragged out even longer. But yes, the Panthers won the game, definitely the better team in this matchup. Right. The Giants have a whole lot of work to do before 2025 season if they want to be in contention next year for the division, but it's not happening this year.
No, not even close. Not even close. Oh man, poor hard luck Giants. They fall to 2-8. The Panthers, they improved to 3-7, and they did something for the first time in 2 years. They actually now have put together a winning streak. Did you think we'd actually say that about this moribund franchise? Well, congrats to the Panthers. They had to travel across the Atlantic to actually extend a winning streak of 1-2. Then there is the Colts hosting the Bills, getting to our Sunday afternoon tilt. How can I describe this game? The Colts really didn't stand a chance. I mean, with the pick 6 that was returned for a touchdown early in the game, that pretty much was it. The Bills cruised, and I do really mean cruise, to a 30-20 victory over the Colts. Josh Allen didn't have the greatest of games, 22 of 37, 280 yards. He did throw 2 interceptions. He didn't throw a touchdown. He did rush for a touchdown off of 8 carries and 50 yards. James Cook, who's now starting to see the ball more, and I'm happy to see it. 19 carries, 80 yards, and a touchdown. He also has a reception for 5 yards. Mac Hollins, he led the way with the receptions, or I should say the yardage on receptions. 4 receptions, 86 yards. The Bills defense, now I did mention 3 interceptions. Tyron Johnson, I think he was the one who had the pick 6. Austin Johnson with a pick and Taylor Rapp with a pick. But the Bills defense, not to be outdone by the secondary, they put Joe Flacco to the turf 4 times. But also not to be outdone, the special teams had some action in. Tyler Bass, 3 type of field goals off of 3 attempts. But then we get to the Colts. Joe Flacco, 26 of 35, 272 yards. He did throw 2 touchdowns. I did touch it about those 3 picks. He also did you got to be more careful holding on to that ball. Jonathan Taylor, 21 carries, 114 yards. Wasted effort, unfortunately. 2 receptions, 8 yards along with it. Alec Pierce, 4 receptions, 81 yards. He had a receiving touchdown. And those 2 picks that I mentioned for the Colts, EJ Speed had 1 and Kenny Moore the second has another for the season. Okay, so your thoughts on the Bills going to 8-2 with this 30-20 victory in Indianapolis?
This right here was on the backs of the Bills defense, which has obviously been a big part of their success this year. I mean, you can't take away from what Josh Allen's done because, I mean, he went 8 weeks until he threw his first interception. But at the same time, when you put it all in perspective, think about what this defense has been doing. You know, you got Von Miller back, you know, the start of this year, which is something they didn't have last year, who's definitely a big part of the leadership for this defense. And when you're taking 3 interceptions away from a former Super Bowl MVP, that you're doing something. And that's what the Bills defense did in this game. They put pressure on the offense of the Colts, not so much the running attack, because the running attack was what kept the Colts in the game. And had they not thrown those 3 interceptions, they would have definitely been in the game a little bit more. But when you think about it for what it is, the Bills defense is going to be the ticket to how far this team can go this year. And as long as they can stay contestant in all the games they're in, sky's the limit. So they can be the ones that can dethrone the current champs if they continue to play to this level. But they have to believe in themselves. They have to continue to fight forward. And from what I saw in this game, it looks like they have a really good chance of doing so.
Spot on analysis. I think that's the ticket for the Bills. I'm not as concerned about their offense as I am their defense, because the problem has been in their build-up to being a contender to knock off the Chiefs. Can they get the pressure on the quarterback? And Von Miller is supposed to shore that up. And when he's in there, they seem to do well. When he's not, the Bills seem to lack that pass rushing presence. That analysis is nail on head. Yes, they improved to 8-2. Of course, they will await their wonderful matchup that they have coming up next Sunday. We'll, of course, touch on that in 2-minute drill. Meanwhile, the Colts, they now fall to 4-6. And, well, at least they don't look so bad at quarterback. I'm sorry, Anthony Richardson. All right, here we go. The Broncos upset the whoa. Wait a minute. No. The Broncos were about to upset the Chiefs. Will Lutz lined up for a 35-yard field goal with low time remaining, but it got blocked. And unfortunately, the Chiefs do not fall from the undefeated. They win 16-14 over the Broncos. Patrick Mahomes, decent game. Of course, he threw too much. 28-42, 266 yards, and a touchdown. He also had 3 carries for 19 yards. Harrison Butker, 3 of 3 for field goals. Of course, he also had the game winner and was responsible for 9 of the 16 points that the team scored, or 10 of the 16 points the team scored. On the other side, Bo Nix, who seems to be settling into being a quarterback in the NFL. Decent stat line. I actually will take this. 22 of 30, 215 yards, 2 touchdowns. He had 3 carries for -5 yards. Of course, unfortunately, most of that was setting up in 50 formation, the right place for Will Lutz to get his kickoff. But the Broncos defense, they put Mahomes to the ground 4 times. They made life miserable for him all game long. And, of course, I mentioned Will Lutz and the hard luck of not getting that field goal through. Your thoughts on the Chiefs going to 9-0?
This game was pretty much, the combatant of 2 defenses going against each other, because they both struggled offensively to get a running game going. And it definitely hurt them throughout. Between the defense making an impact on both sides and the special teams. And when you think about how the game ended with, Kansas City looking like they're going to lose by a point. Here comes the field goal team out there, and it looks like they channeled the Pittsburgh Steelers for a second with another blocked kick. So looking here with what the Chiefs did, it's miraculous when you think about the 15 straight victories dating back to week 16 of last year, 9 straight wins when losing in the second half and coming back and when you're trailing in the second half and coming back. It's absolutely wild to think about what they're doing, and
Mhm.
especially with some of the low statistical numbers they've had offensively throughout that stretch. They are not the team that they once were, but defensively they've improved. It's like
Yeah.
whichever year you look back on their success over the past half decade, where they're slipping in one area, they've picked it
Mhm.
up in the
And
other.
another.
And,
Mhm.
and that could be in this case special teams, because special teams has had multiple plays that has saved the day throughout this season. So, will this team go undefeated? I still don't think so.
Oh,
And the longer that they win, the longer this streak continues to go, I believe it'll actually hurt this team in the playoffs. Very similar to when you look at when the Colts went 15-1 or whatever it was several years ago, or when the
right.
Patriots went undefeated all the way to the Super Bowl in 2007 and then
Mhm.
lost. You let all your fuel out the tank by the time you even get to the dance. So at
Mhm.
some point, I feel like they're going to lose a game. I feel like they realize this. They're going to have to and reset at some point, because
Yeah.
these wins are not to the caliber of Kansas City Chiefs football.
Not
But
even close.
as far as IQ and intellect goes, still top of the charts for Andy Reid and what he's doing to make these
Yeah.
games work. However, this type of game didn't even rest in the hands of the offense at any point towards the end. This was it was true grit, will, and a little bit
Mm.
of luck to happen at the end to make sure that you still kept that streak alive. But at some point very soon, this Kansas City Chiefs team is going to lose a game.
Oh, there's no question about that. I do not see this team go. This is not going to be the first 17-0 team. I know that when you have a streak like that, luck comes to the play. But you got it. To me, if a team is going to go 17-0 in the regular season, they're going to have to actually not be so glaringly in need of something on one side of the ball. And unfortunately, on offense, they're in glaring need of cohesion. I mean, of course, you have Mahomes that basically keeps all together. Yes, I know there was a Travis Kelce sighting, but he can only contribute but so much. And you got DeAndre Hopkins, who's new. You got Xavier Worthy, who's a rookie, and he's trying to learn his way through. And you have a running game that can be there sometimes, and then is pretty much non-existent at other times. So the Chiefs are relying hard on their defense, and in one of these games, they're going to have a team where they're going to go against them, and the Chiefs may have success defensively against them, but that team is going to execute against them. And we've seen teams that have been able to execute against this Chiefs defense. So if it was the case of, I don't know, like the 2000 Ravens, where they were holding teams to between 10 and 16 points each time, then I'd say they might be able to run the table. No, no. But congratulations to them. They are now 9-0. Now the Broncos, well, although people didn't think they were going to have this record, it's sort of cool that we can actually say they have fallen to 5-5. But who I know this loss is going to sting probably for the rest of the year for them. All right, let's go down to New Orleans, where the Falcons should have beaten the Saints. They didn't. They fall 20-17 in the Superdome. Derek Carr, he was 16, I'm sorry, 25, 269 yards and a couple touchdowns. He did also have 4 carries for 17 yards. Alvin Kamara couldn't really get it on the ground, get it going on the ground. 17 carries, 55 yards. In through the air, he did have a little more damage. 5 receptions for 54 yards. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who was a Chief, now he is a Saint. 3 receptions, 109 yards, and both of those touchdowns receiving from Carr. On defense, a Honey Badger sighting. And Tyrann Mathieu, he got your pick. And on defense, I'm sorry, on the other side of the coin, Kirk Cousins, 23-38, 306 yards, too many throws, and that pick that I mentioned of Tyrann Mathieu. Bijan Robinson, wasted wonderful effort on the ground, 20 carries, 116 yards, and both touchdowns. He also had three receptions, for 28 yards. Drake London having a presence on the team, 8 receptions for 97 yards. Darnell Mooney on the other side, not to be outdone, 5 receptions for 96 yards. But the story of this game is Young Wei Koo. He did make 1 field goal, but because of the final score, he missed not 1, not 2, but 3 field goals. Eesh. Your thoughts on the Saints beating their arch rivals?
Last week we were roasting Derek Carr for probably coming back a little too soon, but had he not come back and gotten smacked around like he did the previous week, he might not have had enough reps to do what he did in this game because, you have to give credit to Derek Carr for one, not turning the ball over, 16 to 25, 269 yards and 2 touchdowns, nearly 300 yards passing, and he didn't turn the ball over. That speaks volumes for Derek Carr to have almost 300 yards and not turn the ball over. I think that what kept this team from separating from the Falcons was the fact that they couldn't really establish too much of a run. Alvin Kamara did get 55 rushing yards, but it took him 17 attempts to do so. And, averaging 3.2 yards per carry, it's a little tough, to get things going when you got that type of production. Looking at that, outside of Alvin Kamara, there wasn't really much of a running game at all.
No.
And outside of Marquez Valdez-Scantling, there wasn't much of a receiving game either, even though Kamara did add another 5 receptions for 54 yards. So, altogether, the Saints offense isn't what, we're accustomed when we're seeing them click on all cylinders, but they did just enough. I think this speaks more volumes on how out of sync the Falcons were, turning the ball over, of course, by Kirk Cousins. The fact that, like you said, you had a 100-yard performance by Bijan Robinson, and you completely wasted it. 116 yards on 20 carries with 2 touchdowns is huge. That's the only reason why you were in this game. And then Tyler Algier as well, nearly 60 yards on 11 attempts was absolutely huge. And then you look at the fact that you had 2 receivers that were just under 100 yards receiving, and you couldn't win the game. This was definitely more miscues on the Falcons, but at the same time, the Saints, when they had opportunities on offense, they didn't miss. So basically, I would say this game was more so, the miscues of the Falcons offense gave more opportunities for the Saints offense, and they capitalized on those opportunities. So tough divisional matchup, but that's why we have these type of matchups twice a year, because it definitely impacts the division itself.
Yeah, you're right. Let me see. So we had a 300-yard passer, 100-yard rusher, 2 receivers that came close to getting 100 yards in the air, and you still lost. Well, that pretty much means one of 2 things, and both of them happened. You did not take advantage of your red zone opportunities, and when you got into the red zone and you couldn't punch it in for 6, your kicker couldn't even give you 3. So when the special teams aren't there, and as an offense, you do not turn good drives into 6 points, that's problematic. We'll revisit that later.
Yeah, but luckily, for the Falcons, though, they can afford to lose this game because they still have a 2-game lead over the Bucs in the division. So, I mean, it's tough in one hand, but on the other, they're going to be just fine.
Yeah, they have that lead over them and the season series. So, yeah, you're right about that. But yes, they fall to 6-4. The Saints, they improved to 3-7. All right. And you mentioned the team that the Falcons are 2 games in front of, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They were 2 games in front when they started this game. And 2 games behind the Falcons when they started this game. They ended up being 2 games behind them to end it. They faltered to the 49ers 23-20. Brock Purdy threw the ball far too much. I will say that not because it's Brock Purdy, but because a QB should not throw the ball more than 30 times. 25-36, 353 yards, 2 touchdowns. I'll give him credit. He did not turn the ball over. 4 carries for 17 yards on the ground as well. Juwan Jennings, who seems to have about 3 games where you'd say, oh, he's on the team. I thought he was gone. 7 receptions for 93 yards. Jake Moody, I'll get to him in a second. Let's go to the Bucks, shall we? Baker Mayfield, okay, but basically non-existent. 18 29, 116 yards and a touchdown, 3 carries for 3 yards, and he is feeling the losses of Mike Evans and Chris Godwin badly. Bucky Irving, who pretty much is the only offense they've really had, 13 carries for 73 yards and a touchdown. He also had 3 receptions, 14 yards. But the story of this game is Jake Moody, the kicker for the 49ers, where he did give you the game winner, where it just licked the upright, but he missed 3 field goals as well. He was 3 of 6 for the field for the game. All right, your thoughts on the 49ers beating the Buccaneers?
You know, when you talk about somebody throwing the ball too much, didn't somebody throw the ball 61 times last week?
Yes.
I'm trying to remember who it was.
I can't remember the person.
But I remember us talking about it last week that there was a team that threw 61 times. I don't think it was the Browns or Jameis, but yeah, if somebody knows, let us know out here in the comments, because somebody definitely in week 9 threw 61 pass attempts. I know Jameis threw 46. I remember that.
I remember that too.
Somebody threw 61 passes. But anyway, for what it was, this game right here, you know, yes, he threw the ball a little bit too much, but it definitely made an impact because, I mean, they still won the game. I mean, you set up Jake Moody for another field goal, and had Jake Moody not missed those other 3 field goals, it probably would have not had to even come down to that. You know,
right.
The missed field goals made an impact on this game. The fact that Bucky Irving has still been a bright spot to this offense, Tampa Bay, that has been dealing with injuries this year at the receiving position. It's miraculous, even with them being 2 games under 500 with the injuries that they've had. It's miraculous that they are still at that point, because he literally has nobody but Bucky Irving, it feels like, to throw the ball to.
Pretty much.
So besides that, you know, Baker, underwhelming performance overall, though, I would say, you know, 11 incompletions, only 116 yards for an entire game. The San Francisco 49ers defense, their pass coverage is not that good to keep Baker Mayfield, at 116 yards.
No.
So I feel like I don't want to give the praise to the 49ers for the win because of, 1, the way that it happened, but 2, when I look at the underwhelming performance of Baker, how he had a resurgence of his career last year. You're supposed to be playing a team that was in the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. You're supposed to have hype this year based on what you did and how you started this year with the win you had over Washington anyway. And you come into this game and throw for 116 passing yards. I'd say it was an underwhelming performance by the Buccaneers as a whole, an underwhelming performance by Baker himself at the quarterback position, and that they are lucky they were in the game as much as they were, because had it not been for Jake Moody's missed field goals, they would have won by double digits.
Yeah. I think that was part of the reason why I wanted to highlight that, because I was like, so it actually looked like the 49ers had their way with the Buccaneers to a degree. And yes, I totally agree with you. That secondary to 49ers, it's not good to keep a quarterback. It's not good enough to keep a quarterback throwing under for 150 yards in a game. Nah. The defense is solid, but the secondary is not that solid. But credit to 49ers, they pulled it out, although they're bickering with themselves and sidelines. And one of those Jake Moody misses almost resulted in a fight in the sidelines. But 49ers, they improved to 5-4. The Buccaneers, they fall to 4-6. Wow, I did not think they would fall to 4-6, but I guess like we both said, they're feeling the pinch with Godwin and Evans injured. Now to an actually good game. And unfortunately, it features your Commanders, sir. They hosted the Pittsburgh Steelers. They had control of this game for the most part until a rainbow of a pass from Russell Wilson, to newly acquired wide receiver Mike Williams was the difference. 28-27. The Commanders fall to the Steelers by 1 point. Russell Wilson, and look, credit to the Commanders defense. They just kept Wilson running. and uncomfortable in that pocket. 14 to 28, 195 yards. He did throw for 3 touchdowns. He also threw for a pick. He has also had 4 carries for 3 yards as well. Jalen Warren, it was good to see him return and actually contribute. 14 carries, 66 yards. He did have a lost fumble, which I think that was due to a whistle that should have been blown and wasn't. But hey, it happens. Also, 2 receptions of 29 yards. But that 66-yard performance from him, and also I think it was 51 as well from Najee Harris, that helped out the Steelers offense to pound out 140 yards on the ground. And George Pickens looks like he is definitely loving the Russell Wilson at QB life, as he came close to 100 yards receiving again. He didn't get there, but he had 5 receptions for 91 yards and a wonderful touchdown catch. On defense, the man was Cameron Hayward. 2 tackles for losses, a pass defense, 2 quarterback hits, and 2 sacks. In fact, that was the only 2 sacks that the Steelers amassed. Mr. Hayward. And you have Jaden Daniels, 17 and 34, 202 yards. He also had 3 carries for 5 yards. His receivers did not help him out in this game. That's hard. I just have to put that out there. His receivers did not help him out in this game. But Terry McLaurin, he did his thing. 5 receptions, 113 yards in the air. And Dante Fowler, he really won this game bad. 2 tackles for losses, 2 quarterback hits, and 2 sacks, and he was running all over the field. And you had Jeremy Chin with that pick that I mentioned of Russell Wilson. Well, I gave you my thoughts. I think the receivers did not bail out Daniels because he was throwing that ball in their hands, and I just kept seeing one drop after another. Your thoughts on this spectacular game between the Steelers and the Commanders?
This was the battle of the defenses. We were already talking about how the Pittsburgh Steelers defense, top 10 defense in the league, arguably in some weeks top 3, top 5, depending on who they're playing. But this was definitely one of their better performances when you think about the pressure they put on this offense. Mm-hmm. You know, how often have we seen in this great rookie year that Jaden Daniels has had where he's only completing about half of his passes? Like, right. I mean, it's usually 60% or higher, and in a lot of cases higher than that. He's been lights out throughout the season, but we already knew that he was going to be struggling in this game at some point because of the type of defense he was playing. You had Tre'Davious Smith coming over from the he came over from the Lions. Who did Smith come over from for the Steelers just got this past week? The defensive front. He was on the defense. He's on the other side. He's basically filling in for Hutchinson. But he's
you're not thinking about Tre'Davious Smith, are you?
Yeah, I said his name wrong. But where did he come from?
He came from the Packers.
Packers, that's right. Yeah. So, yeah, I butchered his name. My bad, man. But anyway, when it comes to that, I knew his last name was Smith. But, yeah, he made an impact in this game. When you look at what he did at the same time, again, like I can't stress it enough how inconsistent as far as completions Jaden Daniels was. And I'm rocking the People's Elbow Jaden Daniels t-shirt today. But at the same time, he was not on his game fully this past weekend like he had been in previous weekend. So looking at it for what it is, considering he didn't have any touchdown passes, but he also didn't have any interceptions. He didn't turn the ball over. When you think about that going against this type of defense, it's pretty big. It's very promising for the future. Yeah. I do want to correct one thing. I would say it wasn't so much the offense, and their receivers not catching the ball that affected this offense. I would say it was the pressure from the secondary of the Steelers defense, which is why it looked like they weren't helping out Jaden Daniels with catching the ball. Also, there was a lot of kind of like not check downs, but it's still early in the morning for me because I work nights. But where you're throwing the ball away, there was a lot of that because of what Jaden Daniels was doing.
There was a few of those, and I expected that. At
least 8 of those, 15 incompletions,
just straight throwaways. Yeah,
at least half of those were straight throwaways. The other half were basically due to tightly contested defense. Marshawn Lattimore also did not play in this game for the Commanders. He was just brought over from trade last week. We didn't get a chance to really touch base on that because that happened the day after our show last week.
That's correct.
But it happened on Election Day. But looking at that, he should be back from the hamstring injury soon.
That's right. He did.
But the Steelers defense, stepped up big.
Yeah,
Russell
they
was
did.
like you said, was running for his life on
Whew.
offense.
Oh my
But at the
gosh.
same time, had he not thrown that one interception, this game wouldn't have been as close as it was. The Commanders would have
I
still
agree.
lost by a possession, I believe, whether it was a field goal or a
Mm-hmm.
touchdown. They would have added to it to make it a 4-point or an 8-point lead. Either
Mhm.
way, I had predicted this to happen last week and had said it when we were here.
Yeah.
I said the Commanders are close, but they are not quite there yet. They need to make a few more moves before I can keep them in contention with the Steelers. And regardless of what I said last week, they did make a move. They brought in one of the biggest moves you can make, as I've been talking about it all year long. And even into the offseason before the season started, I said,
Secondary
you
help.
need to address the secondary because that is where your biggest hole is on defense. And they did that. They did that at the trade deadline, and I was happy. Unfortunately, it couldn't pay dividends this past week because he's not fully healthy yet. And maybe that was planned because they are on a short week going into the Thursday night game.
So I'm thinking.
And they didn't want to take a chance of him getting hurt before that. And the Eagles game is a bigger game
A little
because
more
it's divisional.
important. Yeah.
So I think there's a really good chance we see Marshawn Lattimore this Thursday, and that it doesn't really hurt too much because they're still 7-3. If you're a Commanders fan, you still have to be happy with how the season started for you because you're still at the top of the division. Of course, you have to beat the Eagles this Thursday to take the division back fully, but at the same time, it's looking good for you. It's very promising future, but they do need to figure out how to go toe-to-toe with these type of defenses with the Steelers. And you can't rely on Terry McLaurin the entire time because even though he had the type of production that he had in this game, he only had 5 catches. So looking at those 5 catches, he did average almost 23 yards per catch. But when your next leading receiver after that only has 2 catches less than you and has 80 less yards, a lot of those numbers came from a couple big plays that Terry had, and that's not always going to happen. And there were some certain things that happened that gave you separation because offensively in the run game, you struggled, but you did still muster up 3 rushing touchdowns because of the type of plays that you had and the type of looks that you had. And you also did this without Brian Robinson Jr. So that was also big.
That's another big key.
For them to do that. And this is 2 weeks in a row that they've been without him. So if they can get Brian Robinson Jr. back, if they can get Marshawn Lattimore in and integrated within this defense, I think that they still have a pretty promising year to still make some noise, finish the division with the win in first place, and at least win a playoff game. But right here and now, they still have to work on those things that we've been talking about all season long. It came into fruition this game. And we're going to see a little bit more struggles like this against top tier teams from the Commanders until they fully address everything.
Remember when I said to you, manage your expectations, because not saying that they're going to be as bad as they were last year, because I didn't think they were. I thought they were going to improve. But measure the success of the season by what Jayden Daniels does. I still am with you. I still will say that to you. Just think about the Commanders' success of the season judged on how Jayden Daniels is doing. Because if he's doing well, the team's going to do well. The team's doing poor, the team's going to do bad. But I mean, hey, for the stat line that he had, and you were within a field goal of beating the Steelers, that is pretty impressive. Your team's ahead of schedule, and if I were a Commanders fan, I'm happy for you. You're ahead of schedule. This is the type of record I expected them to have this time next year. And at 7-3, and in 3 days they get a chance to battle for first place in the division. I mean, you couldn't ask for better. So I salute the Commanders, and they fought hard. Oh my gosh, they fought hard in this game. So to play a team as tough as the Steelers, tooth and nail, and I agree with you, they still have some things to learn. But it still is a positive. They fall to 7-3, but the Steelers, they improved to 7-2, and I guess we can't sleep on the Steelers because it looks like they might actually be throwing monkey wrenches in some teams' plans. We'll see in the upcoming month. And then there's this game. Oh my gosh. The Jaguars hosting the Vikings. This game, I cannot believe I'm about to say this. This game was worse than the Germany game between the Giants and Panthers. 12-7 was the final score. The game really wasn't that entertaining. The Vikings do pull it out. Sam Darnold, decent, if at all okay stat line. 24-28, 241 yards. Unfortunately, he decided to have the yips and throw to 3 different Jaguars. He also had 7 carries for 28 yards. Aaron Jones, pretty good production, 17 carries, 88 yards. 2 receptions with 13 yards. So he gave you 100 yards total of 101 yards total offense. But that 88 yards and the 28 from Darnold, that paced the way for the Vikings to have 169 yards on the ground. And the kicker, John Parker Romo, he scored all the points for the Vikings. Now, for the Jaguars, Mac Jones, 14 of 22, 111 yards, 2 interceptions. I'll mention those 2 interceptions in a second. And also he also had 5 carries for 8 yards. He had a rushing touchdown as well. Oh, those 3 interceptions that Darnold threw, one was to Darnell Savage, one was to Foyesade Olukun, and the other was to Monteric Brown. Now, the 2 interceptions that Mac Jones threw, one of them was to Byron Murphy, and one in the end zone to stymie a touchdown from the Jaguars, Cameron Bynum, who gave us a wonderful ray gun turnover celebration in the end zone. For those who don't know, Ray Gunn had a silver medal, won a silver medal in the Paris Games. No, let me do this correctly. Silver medal in the Paris Games. Let me see. Quote, breakdancing. Close quote. Your thoughts on this debacle?
This game's terrible. It absolutely was terrible. It makes me wonder, you think about Trevor Lawrence could potentially miss the rest of the season with the shoulder injury.
I'm thinking that too.
It makes me wonder if they are going to be tanking the rest of this year. Not for a quarterback, because they still believe in Trevor Lawrence. Plus, you kind of have to because of the amount of money you're paying him. Like, you're kind of locked in for the next several years with him. Not like Deshaun Watson, but you're still kind of locked in with him. So my thought, even though they have drafted a lot of top tier receivers over the past 10 years in the draft, because
That's
you look
true.
at Ridley and everybody else, and then Brian Thomas was the most recent one. Okay. So Brian Thomas Jr., my bad. But I'm thinking that they go after Travis Hunter in this upcoming draft. Because if you're 2-8 now and you continue to lose, let's say you finish 3-14, you're more than likely going to have a top 3 pick at that point. Easily. Because there's other teams like the Panthers that are still winning games that we thought were going to have the number 1 pick, but they're still winning games, especially with what happened this past weekend. So let's just say the Jags only win 1 out of their next 7 games. They finish 3-14. I think that there's a possibility that they go after, top tier offense, because that's what they've been lacking this year is offense, in scoring.
An impact player, yeah.
Because, you look at the fact that the other side, the quarterback threw no touchdowns. He threw 3 interceptions.
3 interceptions and no
they still won by 5 points because they kicked 4 field goals. Okay. So congratulations to another Romo that's in the league now as a field goal kicker. That apparently Tony Romo said yesterday on the air that he'll be rooting for him as his number 1 player because, they share the same last name. But right here and now, when I look at this team, the Jags, I don't see anything looking positive for them for the rest of this year. They're definitely not going to finish with a winning record. at this point.
heck no.
The only way that they would be able to do that is that they won out and won their next 7 straight games, but I highly doubt that, especially with Mac Jones in at quarterback, who was 14 to 22 for 111 yards and 2 interceptions. Absolutely terrible. I think they're going to make a push for an offensive talent. I don't think that they're going to waste it with drafting another number 1 overall quarterback, because you look at the amount of number 1 overall quarterbacks they've drafted within their near 30-year history.
Mm-hmm.
How many of them have really truly panned out? Their best quarterback they've had in their history is somebody they picked up off of waivers with the expansion draft, and that was Mark Brunell back in the 90s. Okay, so. If I were the Jags, I would stay away from yet another quarterback. When you think about what you've invested into Trevor Lawrence, you're stuck with him now. You need to get him some more weapons on offense. And even though they seem like they need some help on the offensive line, Travis Hunter's there and you have a top 3 pick, you might as well go after him, because you could also play him on defense. If that's where they decide to play him too. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point. Dante, I agree with you. Cameron did kill the ray gun dance. And I think Doug Peterson is out of here after this year. Heck, I will not be surprised if they let him go before the season's over, because it looks like that locker room is not listening to him. But you mentioned the Jaguars record. They fall to 2-8. The Vikings, they improved to 7-2. Wow. Did not think that team was actually going to rebound like they have, but they have. Well,
2 straight wins after 2 straight losses, for them, definitely huge. But you can't get mad at the 2 teams they lost to at the same time. I mean, they were tough teams. It's not like they lost to a team like this. Now, if they lost to a team like this, then we would say how much of a fluke type of season they're having. But it's still looking like a promising year when they can have the bounce back they've had.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. So, the Vikings are still in the thick of things, and they still have a good say as to not just the NFC North, but the NFC title picture. Ooh, well, let's see how they will go. But they can't have offensive performances like this too many times, though. Whew. All right, to more Sunday games we go. The Chargers, and this is just the best of the 3 that was on tap on the afternoon. They hosted the Titans. They beat the Titans 27-17. Justin Herbert, if this isn't game manager stats, I don't know what is. 14 of 18, 164 yards, a touchdown, 9 carries for 32 yards, and a rushing touchdown. The Chargers offense, with a running back by committee, they grinded out 145 yards on the ground. On defense, Bud Dupree had 4 solo tackles, 2 tackles for losses, 2 quarterback hits, and 2 sacks. And then you had Tuli Polotu, 3 solo tackles, 2 tackles for losses, 3 quarterback hits, and 2 sacks of his own. And I did say 4 sacks between those 2. Well, they had 4 of the Chargers' 7 sacks of Will Levis, who I still can't believe what I'm about to say. 18 of 23, 175 yards, 2 touchdowns, 5 carries for 41 yards. And the fact that it did not say this man turned the ball over is a total
surprise, motherfucker.
Oh my gosh. The gift that Keith saw getting didn't give a gift. I'm amazed. The aforementioned Calvin Ridley, who was, of course, a Jaguar, now he is a Titan, led the way receiving 5 receptions, 84 yards. Your thoughts on this rather pedestrian game, but probably the most exciting of the 3 in the afternoon?
I would say, the biggest surprise, like you said, was the fact that Will Levis didn't turn the ball over. Because he is like this generation's, and I can't even compare him to him because he won 2 Super Bowls. But, and Will Levis is not winning a Super Bowl at all. This is not happening. But I will say, when it comes to this, the biggest part of his success was what Calvin Ridley did to impact it. Because, he had the 2 scores for him. He, at the same time, had, nearly 100 of those 175 yards for Will Levis in this game with the 84 yards hauled in.
Yeah.
But yes, the 2 touchdowns that Will Levis threw were hauled in by Calvin Ridley. Outside of that, there wasn't really much that he had help with in his receiving game. 5 incompletions, not bad for old Levis, but the defense also stepped up in some areas too for the Chargers without even having him turn the ball over, because they kept the pressure on him. And Herbert won this game with only 164 passing yards. I mean, he was smart too in not turning the ball over, but they had a very, very lackluster running game. Both teams actually did in comparison. I mean, there was nothing really that really I didn't really get excited about either one of their running attacks.
No.
But and Lad McConkey for the Chargers also didn't do huge numbers. But I would say it was time management. It was just the defense of the Chargers too really stepped up. You think about the fact they had 7 sacks on the day. Was it 1, 2, 3? No, they had 8.
Oh.
They had, no, wait, my bad. I missed one. Yeah, no, it's 7. 7 sacks on the day, and Henley had 10 tackles by himself. So the Chargers really on defense, I feel like that was the biggest impact, because they didn't do anything on offense that really blew you away, but they were smart with the football. The Chargers overall have made a lot more intelligible plays on offense this year that have kept them from losing the game. Like, they've managed the game really well, and you can definitely see an improvement in Justin Herbert's game. He's not trying to throw it for 300 plus yards in a game, because it seemed like when old dummy Staley was there before, he was having him throw the ball too much.
Yeah,
like whoever it was last week that we were talking about threw the ball 61 times. When you throw it that many times, you should expect to have 3 and 4 and 5 turnovers in the game, because that is just way too many times to throw the ball. He threw it at the sweet spot. Anywhere between 20 to 30 pass attempts a game is about the bread and butter spot of where you want to be at. And he was just under that at 18. So looking at that for what it is, you had less passing attempts than your opposing quarterback, and you still found a way to win. You also did it when you had a running back who your leading running back was 55 yards carried on a day, and the next one had 50. So combined, I guess they had over 100 rushing yards. Collectively, the running attack for the Titans wasn't bad. Like, collectively, the numbers together were good. They didn't have an individual runner that really impressed me in this game. So if the Titans can improve that, then they can definitely, make moves with what they're trying to do going forward. But the Chargers, with how they're doing it, when you think about the fact that they had, with all those running backs, even though there wasn't one that took it away with the great numbers, but collectively between 6 running backs, including Justin Herbert, the quarterback, they had 140 plus rushing yards on the day. So I would say it was a combination of their overall running game, the fact that their quarterback managed the game and didn't turn the ball over, and the fact that your defense put pressure on the opposing team's offense with 7 sacks and an expletive amount of tackles. They did their jobs. They did it well. It's all on the mentorship, the leadership of the coaching staff. Jim Harbaugh, they're 6-3 now after 9 games. This is something they couldn't do with the previous staff. And it goes to show, just like in Washington, when you change it up and you establish a culture and you have true leadership in the locker room, sky's the limit.
Yeah. It's amazing how you can have someone who fits a culture and fits the talent. How much better that same talent, that if you put someone who is not quite as well equipped to guide and lead them, how much better they perform. You can say that about your Commanders. You can definitely say this about the Chargers. But because Brandon said he was not it definitely looks like the Jim Harbaugh is. Because I don't think I've ever seen Justin Herbert look as good. And yes, I know he's thrown a lot less, but I should like him in this particular standpoint, because he's capable of going off for 300 yards. He doesn't need to. But the reason why the Chargers are 6-3, and I did not think I was going to say that about them. I'm happy for that. I didn't think I was going to say it about them. Meanwhile, the Titans, they dropped to 2-7, and there is no end in sight for them because they are sinking like a rock. And I'm smiling all the wider. Let me see. How should I attack this? Oh, screw it. The Cowboys. The Cowboys. The Cowboys. We ain't gonna beat. No, I'm not gonna do that yet. The Cowboys. They host the Eagles. I don't know why they even put themselves on the field. The Eagles basically ran a scrimmage. 34-6 was final score, and the Eagles could have named the final score. That was how bad it was. Jalen Hurts, who we talked about just against the last game, the sweet spot is 20 to 30 throws. He had 20, 14 of 20, 202 yards, 2 touchdowns. He did make some mistakes because he did throw an interception and he did do but he also had 7 carries for 56 yards and he had a couple of touchdowns on the ground too. So he did some damage in this game. A.J. Brown, 5 receptions for 109 yards on the day. Defensively, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, he gave you a pick. And the Eagles defense with with an interception and a bevy of fumbles, they forced 5 turnovers. Gosh. Cooper Rush on the Cowboys, who, of course, is a substitute of Dak Prescott, who looks like he's going to be out for the year. 13 of 23, 45 yards. He also had 2 carries for 2 yards and not 1 but 2 lost fumbles. Oh my gosh! Yes, there was a Trey Lance sighting, and he also had a lost fumble. But hey, there was some bright spots. DeMarvion Overshown, 8 solo tackles, 2 tackles for losses, 2 quarterback hits, and 2 sacks. Michael Parsons, tackle for loss, quarterback hit, and 2 sacks. And the Cowboys defense, they put Hurts to the ground 5 times. So there's a bright spot there. But your thoughts on this bally whopping that the Eagles put down Dallas and Arlington?
Whew. I love it so much when we get to see Cowboys Nation take the it was so great to watch them take it. But at the same time,
beautiful.
At the same time, there's only been so much you can watch. I mean, you got to turn the TV off at some point. This game right here, you could not watch it through and through. I mean, there as soon as I got through like the first and a half, I was like, I got better things to do. I'll check out the highlights later because it's not worth me sitting around and watching this game. But and there was other good games on too. But and especially when you think about the game we just talked about, the Charger game, because that was probably the better of the ones, like you said, for the 4:00 games. But for this team, the one stat line that you didn't mention, I don't blame you for not mentioning it, but I kind of want you, just because I want to make fun of them just a little bit more.
Please do.
The Cowboy Nation thought the answer was bringing in Ezekiel Elliott during the offseason. Bringing him back. 6 carries for 22 yards, averaging 3.7 yards per attempt. Absolutely terrible when you think about this. I mean,
garbage. Yes,
it makes you wonder if there's anybody out there that's still saying this.
Ain't nobody calling me, texting me, paging me, asking me, are you still involved? Delete!
You haven't been them boys for a very long time, and it doesn't look like you're anywhere close to getting there when you have numbers like that. This team is absolutely lost. I mean, you said it yourself 13 to 23 for 45 passing yards. You can't even do it. You can't even play that bad if you played Madden and put it on all Madden and you took the worst quarterback and signed them off the street at like a 52 overall rating, and then you played them at starting quarterback on the worst offense against the top tier defense. You can't even put up numbers that bad.
He said so. All Madden. All Madden setting. You couldn't play that bad. Wow, that is sad.
When you have a receiver like CeeDee Lamb, who's still healthy, okay?
Oh gosh,
when you have a tight end like Jake Ferguson who's still healthy, okay?
Pretty good.
How are you only putting up 45 passing yards? And you had to bring in Trey Lance, who
didn't do much better.
He didn't do much better, and he also threw an interception. I will at least say Cooper Rush didn't turn the ball over, but I don't know if I'd much rather have a turnover from you if you could throw 100 yards.
Well, I mean, he didn't throw an interception.
He fumbled it, yeah.
He fumbled twice.
Yeah, he did fumble twice. But his defense, they were in this game, I will say, the first half. Okay, when we went to halftime, it was 14-6, and it was only because of the way the defense was playing that first half. Okay.
Right.
They gave up a touchdown in the first quarter and the second quarter.
Second.
I will say I was a little bit dramatic earlier. I would say watching this game up until halftime, once it turned into the third quarter, that's when it was time to turn it off because the Eagles got 2 touchdowns. They're up 28-6, and that was about the time to turn it off. Straight up happy for Dante getting the type of win. Brings a little bit more clout to Thursday night's matchup that we'll talk about here in a little bit.
Yeah.
However, you can't get so excited when you look at the type of team that you just played, okay, the Dallas Cowboys, because it looked like the New York Giants put on their uniforms and went out there and played. That's how bad they were. And at the same time, I feel like they kicked that quarterback off the team and found some guy hanging out in the street corner to put on the jersey to play quarterback for them because it was that bad. Cooper Rush did terrible. Trey Lance came in during even absolute garbage time and didn't play any better. This team is in trouble, not just for this season, but beyond, because there's only but so many moves you can make in the draft this upcoming year and during this offseason because to my knowledge, and I'll do a little bit more digging, the free agents that are available for signing this year, the type of caliber of free agents, and even if you only get 2 or 3 of them, still top tier of the 2 and 3, you're not going to get anybody that's going to be that much of an impact to turn your team around. You need not only new players, you need a new head coach, you need new ownership. You need to do what the Washington Commanders did.
You definitely need a new manager
for the Dallas Cowboys. And yeah, a new general manager could be the same thing as far as changing the culture because you need somebody making better decisions for your personnel. You need somebody leading your team as far as the coach in a better way. And you need a legitimate running game. You need another piece to help out of the receiver. You need some more people on the offensive line. You need more help you need help everywhere. Okay. Yeah. And this type of win, as much as I want to praise the Eagles for doing what they did and winning by the deficit of what they did, they should have won by more when you think about what they were playing up against. Jalen Hurts still had a turnover. You still had lackluster running out of Saquon in comparison to what he's done this year because 14 carries for 66 yards, not even 5 yards per carry, is lackluster when you think about how he's played against other teams. When you're playing against a team like the Dallas Cowboys, yes, their defense is okay, and that's why they've been close into the games that they have been in. But at the same time, Saquon hates the Cowboys. He usually averages like 100 yards per game against the Cowboys when he was with his former team in the Giants. So this is an underwhelmingly performed game by him. The fact that Jalen Hurts had to run the ball 7 times, it was only 10 yards less than Saquon on the day in carries, and had 2 touchdowns, and Saquon got none. I feel like he dropped the ball a little bit there. And A.J. Brown, he did great on the day with 5 receptions for 109 yards. But your next leading receiver had 27 yards, was Jahan Dotson, the former Commander. They need to definitely improve some things because Devontae Smith only having 14 yards. was lackluster.
That's inexcusable. Yeah.
Dallas Goedert only having 25 yards is lackluster. Jahan Dotson, that's about the type of numbers he would have with Washington. He'd have a catch or two for 20 or 30 yards, so I'm not even mad at that. And A.J. Brown did good, but they need to be able to balance it out a little bit more, especially with you being 7-2 and wanting to make a playoff run, and you still have to get past a pretty tough Commanders team that hung tough with the Steelers yesterday. So
they played them twice. Yeah.
There's a little bit more improvement I need to see out of this Eagles offense if they want to be competitive in this NFC East division to take it. Saquon needs to remain consistent. I like the amount of carries he got. I don't like the average per carry. I don't like the total numbers for him, especially when Jalen Hurts was 10 yards behind him. And I think they need to get their receivers going a little bit. But their defense was absolutely great.
The defense turned around the form. Yeah.
Yes. They were the ones that were the top. They were the top performers of the day. But Hurts needs to do a little bit better job protecting the football. Saquon needs to get going a little bit more, and they need to integrate their other receivers a little bit better. Other than that, I like what I saw out of Philadelphia on Sunday.
Same. Dante actually said that Saquon got hurt in the first half. So I got being backwards. He said he's good. Didn't really need him, which I agree. The Eagles were starting to roll in the third quarter. You really didn't need him. So
I missed that. I dropped the ball on that one.
So I sort of had the feeling that was like, okay, I think this is more along the lines of the coach is calling off the dog, so to speak. But yeah, I understand that. And Dante actually agrees with you about the Cowboys. It's like, yeah, they suck. And basically it was they won a game based on the Eagles having the talent and the Cowboys not having as much. And he said, yeah, Hurts looked good, but when you just have so much talent and much more than the other team, how are you supposed to perform? So he agrees with you. It's like, yeah, it's a win, but it's the Cowboys and they're not really all that talented right now.
The only talent
I can't really go woo about it. That's the feeling I'm getting from Dante. I'm sorry.
The only talent they had was on defense, because on offense they had straight bums.
They don't have any.
They had, except for CeeDee Lamb. I felt bad for CeeDee. Yeah,
I do too.
I felt bad for him because he deserves better. The type of talent he brings. Yeah, because there's nobody around him. There was 10 bums and one talent.
Oh my gosh! So yeah, So Cowboys fan, we ain't gonna be hearing this from you probably for the rest of the year. This has been yet another beating a dead horse presentation. Because your team now is 3-6, and your GM/owner is hot, as he should be, because he's messed the team up. Meanwhile, the Eagles, they now improved to 7-2, and they are now going back home to face off against the Commanders for first place in the NFC East. And it's not involving the Cowboys. Thank the good Lord. And now it's time for the Dumpster Pelican game of the week. And it is in the desert between the Cardinals and the visiting Jets. I think, Mr. Murphy, you do it much more justice than I. 34-6, and the Cardinals were sleepwalking through this game. Kyler Murray, 22 of 24, 266 yards and a touchdown. He also had 3 carries for 21 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. Frame that, because that's exactly the stat line you would want to see from Kyler Murray. Trey Benson, 10 carries for 62 yards. He also had 2 receptions for 25 yards. James Conner, 12 carries for 33 yards and a touchdown. He also had 5 receptions for 80. The rushing attack for the Cardinals varied as it was. They gave you 147 yards on the ground. Meanwhile, the Jets. Aaron Rodgers, 22 of 35, 151 yards. Oh, no, by the way, but not to be outdone, all the points were scored by Mr. Spencer Schrader, 2 field goals. Your thoughts on this hot garbage of a matchup?
This game was so bad. It really, really was. And, as far as the Jets go for the rest of this year,
Ain't nobody care. Who cares? Ain't nobody care.
because for the rest of this year and for the entirety of the 2024 season, this team has been entirely before the trade deadline, they thought the answer at wide receiver was to
Stop it. Get some help.
we didn't really need it because you look at what Mike Williams did yesterday again with the Steelers.
Yeah.
Against the Commanders.
Game-winning
Yeah,
touchdown.
he only had one catch, but he had a 32-yard touchdown. Okay.
It was a game winner.
And it was the game winner, yes. So it just goes to show, even though he only knew 5 plays of the playbook because he was there for a short week, they still found a way to get him integrated. That's good coaching. That's good leadership over there. The Jets don't really have that. Unfortunately, Jeff Ulbrich is doing the best that he can, but he is not a head coach.
Nope.
He's barely a defensive coordinator. He's barely been in the defensive coordinator position long enough to be considered one. So they're a complete mess. I don't even know if they get new leadership, if it's worth it to bring Rodgers back next year. I mean, you're stuck with Devontae Adams for another 2 years because of his contract.
Right.
To keep him happy and to keep him wanting to be there, you'd be better off trying to bring Rodgers back for another year. But at the same time, statistically, it's not even worth it to bring Rodgers back because he's barely throwing 150 yards a game. When you look at what he did in this one, he threw for 151, 22 or 35. These are pedestrian numbers compared to what Aaron Rodgers used to put up back in the day. I get it. Yeah, he took almost a full year off because he was hurt 4 plays into the 2023 season.
Right.
But at the same time, I don't feel like you should be off the cliff this bad. I mean, he didn't have any touchdown passes. He didn't have any interceptions thrown, but he did have that lost fumble that definitely does impact them. Kyler Murray, I will say, played very well as a game manager by only having 2 incompletions and not turning the ball over. Their rushing attack, like you talked about, was very solid. The one thing I'm concerned about for them is the fact that their running back was the leading receiver in this game. And that's going to speak volumes into what they do in a playoff run if they continue to win. I am concerned about that. However, looking at this defense, they put the pressure on the Jets' offensive line. The defensive front of the Cardinals was in the Jets' offense's face all game long, putting pressure on Rodgers. It seemed like every other play I was looking at, Rodgers was getting knocked to the ground. He had the pressure knocked on him. Looking at this Cardinals defense for what they did, even though they only had, 3 sacks on the day, there's a lot of quarterback pressures. There are a lot of, as Aaron Rodgers is throwing the ball, he's getting hit type of plays. So the pressure was in his face. Analyzing the play for what it is, though, I would have to say that it was more so not the defensive front putting the pressure on Aaron Rodgers to where he could actually not penetrate, not make any move. It was more so Aaron Rodgers not playing with the high enough tempo to keep up with the flow of the game to where he was causing his own sack or his own inabilities to get the ball out quick enough to where the defense is catching up to him, because it was absolutely terrible with how he was leading this offense. It was absolutely terrible when you look at the production. 31-6. You have to bring in Devontae Adams to make things right with the offense. You have to trade away Mike Williams to a contender and the Steelers to make things right. Yet you lose. This Jets team is an absolute dumpster fire, spearheaded by Dumpster Pelicans. And there is no way, and I mean no way, they're making the playoffs this year.
Oh, my brother, testify.
Thank you, Devon. I think you raised a really good point. The fact that Rodgers might be causing bad play due to basically being, I guess you could say, slower in motor than the action on the field is. And sometimes that's a good thing because you're just playing under control. But when there is no sense of urgency along with that slow uh, reaction to things, that could be hugely problematic. Uh, Dante actually said that he thinks the Cardinals might be onto something, considering that you might have some talent outside of Harrison. But I do agree with you. I want to see Murray go to his wide receivers just a little bit more than he does, because he seems to like to go to his running backs a little too much.
Yes.
In the passing game. I do agree there. But yes, the Cardinals do have talent when they are focused. And right now, they are in the head of the class in the NFC West. They're at 6-4. The Jets, they're 3-6. Oh my gosh, it's horrible.
3-7.
I'm sorry, thank you.
3-7.
3. I was trying to be nice. 3-7.
Don't be nice to them.
Well, I'm sorry. I was being nice to the rest of the Jets. Now to
I felt like I need to click this button.
That was a lie.
now if I said
Not
that about,
being nice to them.
now if I was saying that about the Titans, that button would be definite. Because I wanted to be 0-17, but I know that won't happen. But yes, thank you, sir. The Jets they dropped to 3-7. But the Cardinals, they are at the head of the NFC West. They are at 6-4, and looks like they're trying to now hold off the 49ers and the Rams. All right. Sunday night action. Saw the Detroit Lions going down to H-Town to visit Houston and to play the Texans. And the Texans wanted to look like candy apple red cars as painted in Houston. My bad. Really, this was a good game, and this went just about the way I thought it was going to go. The Texans had a 23-7 lead at half, and the Texans didn't score another point. The Lions, they raced out to a 19-0 second half to beat the Texans 26-23. Jared Goff, easily the worst game of the year for him. 15 of 30, 240 yards, 2 touchdowns. I'll get to what really makes it bad for him a little later. 1 carry for 2 yards. And that carry was huge because I think that actually was for a first down on a drive that actually ended up being a touchdown at the end of it. Jahmyr Gibbs, who the Texans somewhat did not have an answer for, 19 carries, 71 yards, 2 receptions for 37. Carlton Davis III, to me, he's one of the MVPs of this game. 2 third-quarter INTs. The second one was, I think, the bigger of the 2. The Lions defense, they just simply made life difficult for Stroud all game long, put him to the turf 4 times. The hero of the game, Jake Bates, 2 field goals. The longest was 58, which licked the right goal post, and the 52-yarder, the game winner, which licked the left goal post. But we talked about the Texans. C.J. Stroud, 19 of 33, 232 yards. He had a touchdown. He did have 2 picks. I mentioned who gave both of them. Carlton Davis III. He also had a carry for 5 yards. Now, Jared Goff, 13 of mentioned the 15 and 30, mentioned 240 yards. He did throw for 2 touchdowns. He had 5 interceptions. Jimmy Ward, Henry To'oTo'o, Kalen Bullock, each with a pick, and Kamari Lassiter with 2. And then you had Keami Fairbairn, 3 or 4 for field goals. He had his long for 56. Unfortunately, the one that he missed was shanked like a slice shot off a tee from 58. Your thoughts on that? Really was an entertaining game between the Texans and the Lions.
So, I'm conflicted. I'm conflicted a little bit. I'm happy for my man Hawk for getting this type of win, this gritty type of win for his team. Feel bad for you and your Texans because, this is your Texans team. But at the same time, there's fans out there today that are convinced that this game was rigged. And I will say this,
Rigged.
based, yes. When you look at the way with 2 minutes remaining in the game, the Texans were on the verge of taking the lead on a 3rd and 4th. For a third and fourth at the Lions' 40-yard line. It was C.J. Stroud's attempted pass to Xavier Hutchinson fell incomplete. Fairbairn then missed a field goal, a 58-yard field goal attempt to keep the score at 23-23 before Detroit took advantage at the short field, set up a Jake Bates game-winning field goal. Hutchinson was unable to catch the pass from Stroud on the 3rd and 4th after being bundled over by Lions cornerback Terrion Arnold, only for the pass interference to go unpunished. So when you look at that, when you look at it for the no call, if you go around social media, especially on X, people are going around saying it was the most clear pass interference of the season. But when you look at it for what it is, I need to say this in response to these the noise that's going around on social media right now. Usually when you get inside 2 minutes, you get to the very pivotal points of the game, you're going to see either one or two things from the refs. Either A, they're going to let the two teams play it out unless it's a very obvious call that they have to make.
Right.
Or B, they're going to overly call on penalties. It's either one or the other. There is no good balance. It's been like this since the beginning of time with referees in NFL for football or umpires for baseball, you name it. There is never a clear guideline of fair and unfair, or it's just either or. Okay. And in this case, they let them play. And it's like politics, right? You got one side or the other. One side wins, the other side's not happy, and vice versa. And this is exactly how it goes. If the refs don't call the calls, you get upset. If they call them and they go your way, you're happy. If it's vice versa for the other team, it's the same thing. So, looking at it for what it is, my message to those people out there that are whining and crying today about the PI call, you just can't do that. You gotta let it play out. I'm glad they let it play out because even though you can look back at the tape and say, yeah, I guess it can be considered a pass interference, you got to appreciate the game of football a little bit more when you're letting them play it out.
Right.
I will say that this game speaks volumes as to what you've been saying all year. And I said this to you last night. I said, this game speaks volumes into what you've been preaching all year as to where they're still a good team in the Texans, but they still have a ways to go. They still need to grow a little bit more, especially on defense and also on offense, because CJ Stroud, there were certain opportunities that he had in this game to really pull it away, and he couldn't quite do it. He didn't have he didn't quite have what it took to get it done because, he had 14 incompletions. He only had a touchdown and 2 interceptions, 232 passing yards. It's a little pedestrian for him, and usually he does a little bit more than one carry for 5 yards. Joe Mixon himself was another underwhelmingly performed player in this game. Yeah. He had 25 carries, but he only put up 46 yards, averaging 1.8 yards per carry. That's pedestrian considering what Joe Mixon has been doing this year since he came over from Cincinnati. So your lack of running game was what hurt you, but I think a lot of that had to do with the pressure that the Lions defense was putting on you because they have been really good at stopping the run this year. That's been one of their really, really big strong suits. Their ability to stop the run and the play management, the game management by Jared Goff has been on point up until this game. This is the first game that he really fell off. There's not many games where a quarterback can throw more than 2 interceptions and still win the game. This guy threw 5. Okay. There's certain cases. There was one earlier we talked about where a quarterback had 3 interceptions and was close. But at the same time, you throw 5 interceptions, we usually see like a 4+ score point differential.
Right.
All right. This was definitely not expected for them to even be as close as they were. And I was talking to you about this when it was 23-13.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and when we were texting back and forth about this game, I said it speaks volumes about what you are saying, Cole Johnson, this season.
Mm-hmm.
When the team is still only down by 10 points, and they came back to score another 13 points after that, and the Houston
Mm-hmm.
Texans didn't score an expletive point in the entire second half.
The way. Mm-hmm.
So I would say that the pressure from the defense on Houston from the Detroit's the pressure on the offense of Houston by Detroit's defense was huge.
It was.
But the mismanagement of the offense by CJ Stroud is what bit them in the rear end during the second half, because they should have scored. They should have scored at least a field goal. And had they scored a field goal, they would have won the expletive game, because it came down to a final play of a go-ahead field goal. That had you at least scored a field goal in the second half, you would have gone to overtime.
Yeah, at worst overtime. Right.
I rest my case.
Oh, I don't disagree with one single syllable you said. The reason why I'm not hot about that 3rd and 4, the play before the Kaimi Fairbairn slice shot from 58 yards, is because that was a thought I had. I was like, yeah, that could be pass interference, but the ref swallowed the whistle. There was a play earlier in the quarter where it could have been considered roughing the passer, because it was a golf through, and I forgot who it was. I think it was Danielle Hunter. He launched and hit, and his helmet hit the side of Goff's helmet, but the refs didn't call it. So I was like, okay. Normally, and the way I look at it, when I see a no call on one side, the refs, to make it fair, normally they will no call a big play on another, and that was, to me, the big play they no called. So I was like, okay. So that's why I wasn't tripping. I'm like, yeah. Was it pass interference? Yeah, but they let a roughing the passer penalty go off the Texans, so they were going to let that PI go. Okay, fine, cool. But it was still up to the Texans to win that game, and there were many instances where I'm like, if you actually had the ability to actually be the team that I really believe you can be, you would take a squad like the Lions, know that you have to stomp on their neck and keep your foot on their neck. For example, they were up 7-0. They were 1st and goal at the Lions 3 to go up 14-0. Yet you have a holding penalty that just screwed the whole thing up, and they had to settle for a field goal. That's in the first quarter. And then, to me, the play of the game was the third quarter. Up 23-13, driving. I think you were inside the Lions 30. You run a bootleg to the right. You have Tank Dell wide open. You set all of this up by running Mixon to the left. Set all that up. And the Lions effectively did the same thing with doing that with Gibbs on a drive, and then they did a bootleg roll to the right, and Sam Laporta was wide open. But here's the difference. Goff led Laporta beautifully for a touchdown. Stroud had all day figured that Tank Dell was so wide open, he decided to sit and loft the ball in the air, which, of course, it gave Carlton Davis the third plenty of opportunity to close in and sneak in and get that pick. A veteran quarterback would realize, oh, I see him open. Let me throw it right when I see him open and the space is there. And then let me throw him open. And if that were to have happened, that game would have been 30-13 there. And even if they were to not have scored another point, that'd be a W. But unfortunately, that's not what happened. The Texans, they fall to 6-4. The Lions, they improved to 8-1, and I give them my credit. They grinded out the game, and like I said to you, sir, the Texans, they are not AFC Championship ready yet. They still have some lessons to learn, and we got a chance to see it Sunday night. Oh, well. But that's what happens, so hopefully this will sting a long time for them because it needs to. It needs to sting. Now for the the Bears. They host the Patriots, and this is ridiculously and a game that I wish wasn't played, but they decided to play it, and the Bears decided not to show up in it. The Patriots, they just simply mollywopped the Bears 19-3. The score was not even that close. Drake May, I mean, the score is not indicative of really what went on. Drake May, 15-25, 184 yards. He did throw a pick, but he did throw for a touchdown as well. He also had 4 carries for 24 yards. Patriots offense with a rushing by committee. They grinded out 144 yards on the ground. On defense, Anthony Jennings, 4 solo tackles, 2 tackles for losses, 3 quarterback hits, and 2 sacks. Deatrius Wise Jr., he had a tackle for loss, 2 quarterback hits, and 2 sacks. I did mention 2 guys had 2 sacks each. The Patriots defense, 13 tackles for losses, 13 quarterback hits, and 9 sacks. Goodness gracious. Bears offensive line, 5 300-pound turnstiles. Joey Sly, 4 of 4 for field goal range. And the longest was like 37 yards. Caleb Williams, 16 of 30, 120 yards, 2 carries for 15 yards, and the dude was running for his life. Your thoughts on the Bears not even showing up at home against the Patriots?
This game is absolutely terrible. I do not recommend going back and watching the highlights because there's not much for you to watch. This Bears team is in absolute trouble. They thought that just getting Caleb Williams was going to be the answer to their problems, especially with how things started the first month of the season for them. Just goes to show the type of talent they were playing for one, but also the other teams hadn't quite fully warmed up yet. And they have a lot of work to do this offseason if they want to actually be a serious team next year. Same thing for the Patriots. This was definitely probably, this was, in contention for Dumpster Pelican Bowl of the week when we were talking about other games like the Cardinals and the Jets. But considering that the Bears lost the way that they did, when they lost to the Commanders in Washington a couple weeks ago, that took all the wind out of their sails, and they haven't fully recovered yet. And especially when you lose to a team like the Patriots in this fashion, it just goes to prove how true that is. I don't want to talk about the Bears anymore.
I don't either, except for the fact that they dropped to 4-5. Meanwhile, the Patriots, they improved to 3-7. This game was absolutely horrible. Goodness gracious. Now we get to Thursday's game. And it was the game of the week between the homebound Baltimore Ravens and the visiting Bengals. Now, when they played in Cincinnati, it went to overtime. And the Ravens won 41-38. This one went down to the wire, but it didn't go to overtime. The Ravens, they eked out a 35-34 victory over the Bengals. Lamar Jackson, stellar. 25 of 33, 290 yards, 4 touchdowns, also 7 carries for 33 yards. Tylan Wallace, he led the way with 3 receptions and 115 yards with a receiving touchdown. Defensively, you had Nnamdi Madibuke. Now, he had 2 tackles for losses, 3 quarterback hits, and all three of the Ravens sacks of Joe Burrow. And you mentioned 61. Burrow, he threw 56 in this game. 34 of 56, 428 yards, 4 touchdowns. He also had 2 carries for 6 yards. Jamar Chase, 11 receptions, 264 yards, 3 touchdowns. He did have a lost fumble, though. Chase Brown, on the ground, 13 carries, 42 yards and a rushing touchdown. He also had 9 receptions for 52 yards. Yes, conspicuous in the absence of this, Derrick Henry, who only touched the ball 17 times in this game. Your thoughts on the Ravens eking out a 1-point victory against the Bengals?
The Ravens all of them need to go up to Chase Brown and shake his hand because he's the one who gave this game away for the Bengals. Multiple fumbles out of him in this game, definitely impacted it severely, especially when you think about his lackluster running production at 13 carries for 42 yards. Yeah, he had a touchdown, but it doesn't completely erase the miscues that he had with the multiple fumbles. I mean, it definitely impacted it, especially when you think about what Jamar Chase did to keep you in it with 11 receptions, 264 receiving yards, and 3 receiving touchdowns. Yeah, I get it that Joe Burrow threw for 428 yards and 4 touchdowns, but 3 of those touchdowns came from Jamar Chase. He also, Jamar Chase also had over half of the passing yards received from Joe Burrow. And the fact that Joe Burrow had to throw for 56 passing attempts just to keep this team this close speaks volumes of how lackluster the running attack was, because there's not many teams that can have a quarterback throw for nearly 60 passing attempts, have this game this close with this type of lackluster running production, because, collectively between 3 running backs or with 3 runners, because Joe Burrow's not a running back, but still between 3 people, you had 16 attempts for 49 yards. It's absolutely terrible. You're lucky to be losing by only a point when it comes to that. But had your running back not been, your very young running back, not been fumbling the ball all over the place, they could have easily won this game and be at a 500 record right now. But you're playing against a team in the Baltimore Ravens that is a top tier talent of the league, especially of their division. And, you were able to contain King Henry to only 68 running yards. I would say that that's pretty good for your defense. At least they have that to hang their hat on. But you still gave up 35 points. You still gave up more points than you scored. The offense of the Ravens definitely did pretty solid when you think about their overall production between running and receiving. Their defense did okay. And I say okay, meaning, yeah, they did have 3 sacks, but they didn't force any turnovers except for the fumbles, and they still gave up 34 points. But if you're going to do it to a Bengals team and to this type of divisional opponent, I can't get so upset about that. But Cincinnati is much better than their record. I have to say that I agree with Dante with that. Very, very true. But at the same time, you have to hang this on the fact that your running back of the Bengals is what primarily cost you the game, because it wasn't Joe Burrow and it wasn't anybody else in that offense. It was primarily Chase Brown.
Well, you putting the arrow toward Chase Brown. Dante, I'm 100% with you. To me, this game was lost because of Zach Taylor. You went 4 on 4th down when your team was up 7-0. And instead of kicking the ball to actually have the Ravens drive further downfield, you decide to go for it, you miss, and you gift wrapped 7 points for the Ravens. Then in the third quarter, you're up 21-7, where you're in field goal range. You decide to go for it again. Instead of trotting out the field goal unit, you go for it, you miss again. And that was the difference of the game. And I just simply am not. This game has forever turned me off. Just like 3 years ago when we saw Brandon Staley lose the game for the Chargers and actually have them not go to the playoffs. This is the game that basically has just turned me off cold for Zach Taylor. He lost in this game. Yes, Chase Brown, the players on the field, they can make the mistakes. Yes, but the coach did them no favors, and their record is 4-6 because of Zach Taylor. That is why they are 4-6. But credit to the Bengals, credit to the Ravens. They are now improving to 7-3, and they also have a first place matchup as well. We'll talk about that later, because that now ends not just the game of the week, but it ends the opening drive. We'll be back and we'll preview week 11 of the NFL season.
Find it. All right, let's go. We got trips, right? at 42, 989 on 2. Ready? Break.
We're just getting started. Total Football Talk will return right after this. Whether it's news, the largest egg producer finds bird flu in chickens at a Texas plant, weather, devastating tornadoes rip through the heart of the United States, inspiration, a breast cancer survivor completed the journey of chemotherapy, and now begins a future one of matrimony or sports. Michael Jordan is shown on a photo with Diddy. LeBron James has a video extolling the virtues of a Diddy party. This has been yet another beating a dead horse presentation. We got you covered. BS3 Network, in association with Comey Media Incorporated, proudly present The Morning Shift with Cole Johnson. Live every weekday at 8 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Central. Hey, Eagles fan, join my man Cool McCain and a host of others as they break down every single game, every single week in an objective manner, and also from a fan's perspective as well. Remember, this cast feels just like you. Nobody likes you. And you don't care. Fly, Eagles, fly. Eagles Elite Podcast, every Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern on YouTube and other podcast outlets.
Everything Boston. I love you morons. New Kids on the Block, New Edition.
Dear whatever the law firm is. Sincerely, the U.S. Supreme Court.
Ben Affleck, Matt Damon. Go yourself again, Jason
Where my dogs at? Welcome back to Total Football Talk, and we now award the grand champ. Who is this dog of the week for Drew? And for me, Drew, who's yours?
You know, there's multiple choices that you can go with as far as your dog of the week. There's some pretty good players this past week, and there were some pretty bad ones that we would definitely cover here for the Snowflake of the Week. But when I look at, players that impacted the game the most, reasons why that they won, I got to take a look at, multiple teams that I've got to break down into different ways as to who deserves it and who doesn't. And I think that the most obvious choice for me in this past week would be Lamar Jackson for the Ravens. He had 25 completions out of 33 attempts, nearly 300 passing yards, threw for 4 touchdowns, had 7 carries for 33 yards. Had Joe Burrow and the Bengals won, I probably would choose him. But considering the Ravens won and Lamar had 4 touchdowns, I have to go with him. I would say probably an honorable mention would be Jake Bates for the Detroit Lions. I want to go with him, but I feel like, he had a couple of small flashes in the pan to have his moments in that game with the Lions. Yeah, he had a 58-yard field goal. That was his long, a 52-yard field goal, which was the game winner. And based on our coverage for the UFL this year, I wanted to give it to Jake Bates. But for this particular week in this particular game, I got to give it to Lamar Jackson.
Okay, Lamar Jackson. I'm going to send that. Not a bad choice, actually. Not a bad choice at all. Let me see. Let me rummage through here. Yeah, I could give it to the Patriots off defense. I mean, you sack a guy 9 times. That speaks volumes. Josh Allen would be getting it, but the 2 picks basically eliminates him. All right, fine. I'll give it. No, forget it. I'm not going to give it to Purdy. I'm going to give it to Kyler Murray. We lambast you. We talk trash about you because, well, you had to have a contract incentive for you to actually study the playbook. But it looks like you're trying your best to play your best. And yes, I know your stats this Sunday was very game manager-esque, but if you perform the way that you did yesterday or Sunday, you pretty much will help your team not just go to playoffs, but actually win the NFC West, which that is something you haven't done in your tenure at Arizona. So I give you credit. I love that stat line. I'll take the 22-24, 266 yards with a throwing touchdown and 2 rushing touchdowns off of 21 carries and 21 yards on 3 carries. So yeah, you were responsible for over 280 yards on offense, but you're more responsible for the win, and you're also more responsible for leading the team. Now, are you there yet? Maybe not, but you're on your way there, and hopefully this will be something that will motivate you to be that guy. I think that does it. Yeah.
Total football talk.
All right, time for Total Football Talk. This is where we will preview all of Week 11 and all the action that is there in front of your face and your disposal. There will be 4 teams that will not play, and those teams are the Giants, the Panthers, the Buccaneers, and the Cardinals. That's right, New York Giants, Arizona, Tampa Bay, and Carolina. They all will be on bias this week. But there's still 20 other teams that will be playing. And we will start that focus on probably one of the game. We'll breeze through, I guess you could say, the game tonight. The Rams at 4-5, they host the Dolphins. They're 2-6. ESPN, ABC will be carrying it. The kickoff is at 8:15. All times are Eastern. So you have for tonight's game, sir.
For tonight's game, I'm going to go with the Rams.
Rams. Same. I just don't see what the Dolphins can offer. I agree with you. All right. So let's start with Thursday, shall we? And this I know is near and dear to your and Dante's heart. The NFC East lead will be on the line. The Eagles at 7-2. They will be hosting the Commanders at 7-3. Prime Video will be having this on tap. 8:15 will be the opening kickoff. Who do you have in this game and why?
If this is a regular week, if this was on a Sunday, the Commanders would win this game based on how they've been playing against the type of opponents they've been playing. They've only lost to the Buccaneers, the Ravens, and now the Steelers this season. Yes, they've won the majority of their games against teams with subpar records, but they have proven themselves. The Eagles have at certain points too, but they also have had some miscues against some decent teams as well. However, with that being said, because it is a short week And the Eagles had a chance to rest Jalen Hurts in the last quarter, along with some of their other starters, because they were blowing out the Cowboys. They had a chance to actually sit some players. And the Commanders players were playing from the start of the game to the end, just like what you and I were talking about yesterday. I'm afraid they might be a little gassed going into this game on Thursday night. So because of that, because of the short week, because of the amount of energy they had to put into this past game, I'm going to have to choose Philadelphia to win this game. They improved to 8-2, and the Commanders fall to 7-4.
I'm with you, not because I'm rooting for it, but because I agree with you. The Eagles, they coasted in Sunday's game against the Cowboys. Meanwhile, yes, the game that the Commanders played on Sunday against the Steelers, it went down to the very last minute. And the Eagles got a chance to rest some key players. The Commanders did not. So yeah, I agree with you. I think the Eagles will win. I am rooting for a good game though, and I hope we see one.
Hey, who's giving them the business?
All right, for Sunday. Thankfully, no overseas games. We'll start at Fox 1 p.m. kickoff. The Bears free falling at 4-5. They are hosting the Packers, who are coming off a bye. They are 6-3. Who do you have in this one?
Packers are going to mollywop the Bears, considering how bad they've been playing on offense collectively, and they can't stop anything. They can't even stop a cold on defense. I'm giving it to the Packers decisively by 10 points or more.
You said they couldn't stop a cold?
No, they can't. It's terrible. They get smacked in the mouth. It's absolutely terrible. But yes, they can't stop a cold. Yes, you're going to lose this game.
And considering the Packers seem to own the Bears to boot, yeah, I don't see it to be any other way. I think the Packers are going to win this one, and I think it'll be quite easily, I may add.
Hey, who's giving them the business?
All right, CBS will have this 1 p.m. kick. The Conquering Heroes of Motown, they go back to Detroit, 8-1. They host the Jacksonville Jaguars at 2-8. How bad is this butt whooping going to be?
So bad. The Detroit's going to improve to 9-1. I don't care if you have Mac and Chi in there at quarterback or somebody off the street who doesn't like Trevor Lawrence is going to be in there. This team is not winning this game against Detroit Lions. Lions improved to 9-1.
Yeah. I see a repeat of what they did against the Titans 2 weeks ago, last Sunday, where they just got on a roll and they didn't stop until like the fourth quarter when you look up and they scored 52 on them. Yeah. Jaguars, beware, you're about to get run over.
Hey, who's giving them the business?
All right, CBS will also have this 1 p.m. kick. Speaking of the Titans, 2-7, the Titans, they host the Minnesota Vikings at 7-2. I would have thought this was a slam dunk, but seeing how they played Sunday, the Vikings, I'm not so sure. Who do you have in this one?
Like you said, with the Vikings, the way they played this last week, it's a little concerning going into this type of game right here, especially with the way Tennessee was able to hang tough in their matchup as well. However, just still not sold on Will Levis, especially that being at the quarterback. I feel like Tennessee's in the competition for top 3 to top 5 overall pick in next year's draft. Vikings are nowhere close to that, and they want to continue to prove their dominance in the league this year, and especially with managing the game at the quarterback position. They will improve to 8-2, but I think it's going to be close. It's going to be 7 points or less.
I agree. It's going to be a close, like Lee Corso would say, closer than the experts think. It will be. It will be close, but the Titans will fall, which will, of course, make me happy, but they'll fall, and the Vikings will improve to 8-2.
Hey, who's giving them the business?
Another CBS 1 p.m. kick. This is the 2-6 at the moment. Miami Dolphins. This will be in South Beach. They are hosting the 2-7 Las Vegas Raiders. So I guess in the bowling shoe ugly game of the week, who do you have?
Even though it's the bowling shoe ugly game of the week, this one was a little tough for me to figure out because Both teams are just playing so bad, especially even though Tua's back. It's really not making that much of an impact, but I feel like it will in this game. The Raiders want Shedeur Sanders, and they're going to get closer towards getting Shedeur Sanders when they lose this game. I have them losing probably about 10 points or less, not much more than that, but pretty close to double digits with that. But have the Raiders fallen to 2-8, and the Dolphins improving to 3-6.
Oh my gosh. Did my partner say that the Raiders are in the Shedeur Sanders sweepstakes? Okay. I think they might be because I don't see them beating the Dolphins in South Beach either. Yeah. And yes, and Tua looks like he's improving. Although I wish he wasn't on the field. So yeah, he'll make a difference in this game for sure.
Hey, who's giving them the business?
All right, we have a Fox 1 p.m. kick between the now winning New England Patriots, although they're 3-7. They're hosting the currently right now, as of this recording, 4-4 Los Angeles Rams. They probably will be 5-4 when they play. Who do you have in this one?
This was a pretty interesting one to go back and forth on when I was looking at the slate earlier today, because both teams are pretty close in record. The Rams, however, are better, in my opinion, than the record that they are showing. The Patriots are not better than the Rams. And for that being said, LA gets the win on the road. They will improve to 5-4. They'll be one game over 500, and the Patriots will continue to lose.
I look at the Rams as a team that I think they're starting to get it together. I think their cohesive units are starting to actually coalesce. Offensively, they're starting to get it. Defensively, I think they now have their identity, and I think now it's starting. This inertia is starting to happen. The Patriots, they can only be happy about Drake May actually being a possible future pick. I should say piece in their coffers. Unfortunately, they have very little else, and we'll see that continue this coming Sunday.
Hey, who's giving them the business?
All right, another Fox 1 p.m. kick. Another 3-7 team, the New Orleans Saints, and another 3-7 team hosting. They host the coming off a bye 2-7 Cleveland Browns. Who do you have in this one, sir?
With this one, I would say it's such a bad team against another very bad team. I'm going to go with the Saints in this one just because they did pull it out this past week. It looks like they've got a little bit, a breath of fresh air of life into themselves, with how they got this past win. I feel like they're going to improve to 4-7. The Cleveland Browns will fall to 2-8, and that's what I have for this game.
I want to roll with that, but I just get the feeling that the Saints will find a way to lose this game. I don't know why. I just have that feeling. And I'm just envisioning that somehow I would be thrown at the fact that the Browns will actually pull out a game that they shouldn't. Not saying that I'm rooting for it. I'm just saying that I just see that. But I would not be surprised if the Saints won, obviously. But for some reason, I just see this not going the way it should. But who knows, though? But this game will probably be extremely ugly anyway, though.
Hey, who's giving them the business?
All right, CBS 1 p.m. kick. Another 3-7 team hosting. This one is the New York Jets. They'll be hosting the 4-6 Indianapolis Colts. Who do you have in this game at the Meadowlands?
I want to sit here and throw shade at Aaron Charles Rodgers, but I don't think that that's going to be necessary for this one. I have a feeling that the Colts, with their mismanagement in certain ways of the team, Steichen has been dropping the ball in certain areas. Anthony Richardson has been dropping the ball. The fact they've had Joe Flacco in there at quarterback, they don't know what they're doing with that position right now. And against a Jets team that, they've had miscues, and especially with what Rodgers is doing over there at the quarterback position, I feel like against a Colts team like this, and especially at home, this is like your last gasp. If you lose this game, you're 1000%, in my opinion, not going to make a run at the playoffs this year. You're not even going to make it. If you're going to have any shot at winning the remainder of this year, like or getting anywhere close, you have to start that winning streak here. It has to happen now. And I don't think that's going to happen as far as the streak for them to get to the playoffs, but I feel like they make it interesting and they win this game at home.
Yeah, I actually agree with you. Of course, I'm rooting for the Jets, although I say that wincing because it is Aaron Rodgers, a quarterback for the Jets. But the fact that the Colts are in the same division as the Texans, I got to root for them. But analyst hat on, I do get the feeling that the Jets will probably feel a little more comfortable executing the way they did. I see them playing the similar type of game they did against the Texans here on Sunday against the Colts. And we don't know what to make of them offensively for the Colts. I think that will hurt them in another game. It's hurt them against the Vikings. It hurt them this past Sunday against the Bills. It will hurt them again on Sunday against the Jets.
Hey, who's giving them the business?
All right, probably the main 1 p.m. kickoff game. This will be on CBS. This will be for the AFC North lead. The Pittsburgh Steelers at 7-2 will host in the former catch-up bottle the Baltimore Ravens at 7-3. Who do you have in this one?
Either this game or the Bills and Chiefs will be our game of the week next week, I feel like, when we're reviewing this week. Mm-hmm. And for that, this is going to be a very, very close matchup. It's going to be decided by either 7 points or less, very similar to what I called the Steelers and Commanders game to be for this past week, because this is a divisional matchup. I feel like, it's tough. Because of what the Steelers did against the Commanders,
mm-hmm.
I want to say, because this is going to be in Pittsburgh, I want to say it impressed me enough to where they're going to win.
Mm-hmm.
But something about this Ravens team, they keep finding ways to win these games, especially ones that I feel like they're going to lose. If they can get King Henry running, and it's going to be tough against the Steelers defensive
mm-hmm.
line, but if they can get 75 plus yards out of King Henry, they win this game. And that's what I feel like is going to happen. It's going to be by maybe a field goal or even less, but the Ravens pull this game out and to prove that they are the dominant team of the AFC this year.
I like your number 75. I think that's a really good number, because it's hard to get 100 yards on the ground against the Steelers, because their defense front is just rough. But I do say that Henry needs to touch the ball at least 20 times. Now, they did get away with him not touching 20, and they won in their previous game last week against the Bengals. But I think they have what it takes to beat the Steelers, and they have the one ingredient that it would take to beat them, which is diversity on offense. The Steelers don't provide enough of that offensively on their own, where I think they can have the advantage over the defense of at least the secondary of the Ravens. I think in turn, you have King Henry who can run. You even have Lamar who can run too. And if they can protect Lamar, he can do damage in the pocket too. So with that, a little bit of an advantage, I actually give this to the Ravens. I will not be surprised if the Steelers win it. But I think the Ravens are overall the better team, and I think we'll see it Sunday.
Hey, who's giving them the business?
All right, to the lone 4:05 p.m. kick. This will be on Fox. In the mountains, it will be the 5-5 Denver Broncos, who have taken it on chin the last 2 weeks. They will be hosted the 6-4 Falcons. Who do you have in this one, sir?
This one's tough because the way the Broncos have been playing at this point, as well as, I don't also want to say that they're going to upset them, and then the Falcons take a consecutive loss, because that would definitely hurt their chances in their divisional run at this point if the Bucs won and then they lost and so on and so forth. But And you know what? Because of but they're playing in Denver,
Right.
so it's tough. And Denver just took a loss too. So this one I'm kind of conflicted. I'm kind of split. I don't want to sit here and say that I'm predicting a tie, because that's not going to happen. More than likely, it's very rare do you predict a tie and it happens.
Right.
I feel like for the Falcons, and for Kirk Cousins, and for all the hype they've had during this past offseason, if they're going to continue to keep that afloat, they have to win this game. If they don't, they're only one game over 500 and they're in trouble. So for that sake, I'm going to go ahead and just pick them to win this game.
I just know that the defense needs to be helped out. I mean, you can't have them perform the way they have and be relatively no-name-ish. I won't say they're all no-names, and we know Matthew Judon. But for the most part, you don't really know anyone who's on the team defensively, yet they seem to actually hold teams accountable, and they seem to put their offense in the capable hands of actually executing. You got to do something, and hopefully they can. They do have the talent. To me, Bo Nix grabbing a hold of this playbook and looking more and more comfortable, I think that's the only thing that makes me say it's a slam dunk for the Falcons to win it. But I'm still going to pick the Falcons, because I just think that the Broncos will make that one key mistake that will help tilt it in the favor of the Falcons. But I would not be surprised, though, if this game's close or if the Broncos even win it.
Who's giving them the business?
All right. There's one of the two 425 games. An NFC West matchup. We'll have the Santa Clara Boys, or the San Francisco 49ers. They're 5-4. They host the Seahawks at 4-5. The 49ers already have a win against the Seahawks in tow, beating them in Seattle last month. Fox will have this on their TV. 425 is the kick. Who do you have in this one?
I got a feeling that Gino is going to feel a little queasy from some crab legs. Sam Howell's going to step in and serve the big old. The San Francisco 49ers.
Why?
And I believe.
Why do you have to go the crab leg route?
I believe in this wholeheartedly. You know you do too.
That was a lie.
Unfortunately, for the bandwagoner fans, everybody else who get too excited, I'm picking the 49ers to win this game.
Yeah, unfortunately, the Seahawks, they are not they're not playing together. For some reason, I think after their win in Atlanta, when they went to Detroit, for some reason they seem to lose their way a bit, and they have not gathered it back together to the point where before they went on their bye, they just looked out of sync at home against the Rams, which is strange to say. A Seahawks team looked out of sync at home. But they looked out of sync, but they forced an overtime issue. But they decided to not kick a field goal. They decided to go for it. They missed, and then the defense allowed an easy drive for the Rams to go all the way down the field for a touchdown to end it. And they just seem out of sorts. Now, meanwhile, the 49ers, who they haven't really looked cohesive either, they have a little more talent, and I think they will beat the Seahawks. And it might not be pretty. I'm not gonna say it's a rout, but I think the game might not be pretty. But I think the Seahawks don't really stand much of a chance.
Who's giving them the business?
And here is, to me, I think the game of the week. CBS will have this kick at 425. You have the Kansas City Chiefs, who are undefeated at 9-0. They will be traveling to Western New York to play the Bills at 8-2. Who do you have in this one, sir?
I predicted a couple different ways the Chiefs are going to lose the games this year, and I've been wrong on multiple occasions. However, I feel like this time I'm going to be right. because the Bills have been gearing up for this game right here.
Yeah.
They have one loss this year, and two losses,
Two.
but they are playing like a team that should be 9-0, 10-0 right now, because the way their defense is clicking on all cylinders, the way their offense has been clicking on all cylinders, even without Stephon Diggs, and even more so since Amari Cooper came in. Like we talked about earlier in the show, we talked about for several weeks. Josh Allen didn't have an interception until week 8.
Right.
Okay. That's very good and very promising when you think about that matchup that he has here.
Right.
Patrick Mahomes is going to have to literally play perfect in this game. No incompletions, no turnovers, no mismanagement at all in order to win this game. And he has been a stellar quarterback since he came into the league, but the kid hadn't been perfect. Nobody's perfect.
Exactly.
If so, you'd have a 100% completion percentage. You'd have, the highest 153, whatever it is, QBR. You would be rocking and rolling every single game, and he's not perfect. But you literally, in this game, I feel like he's literally going to have to be 22 for 22 for like 312 yards and 4 touchdowns and have a running game to go with it. So, and Kareem Hunt is doing the best he can.
Right.
But he's not what he was when he was with the Chiefs the first time. Okay. You get the wheels ran off him a little bit in Cleveland, especially since he had to fill the void for Nick Chubb being out the past couple of years. Okay. So thinking about that for what it is, I really, really, really feel like this team, the Chiefs, are going to lose this game. I could be wrong. I very much could be wrong. I've been wrong the other times I picked them to lose, but I feel like throughout the first 11 weeks of the season, with this going into week 11, this is their best chance to really lose to a really good team.
It depends on when the Bills play the Chiefs, and I say it this way. These two teams match up very well against the other, and for this to not really be a rivalry of sorts, it's amazing how they are competitive games that they play. If this game was in January, I would probably pick the Chiefs until the Bills just prove that they can beat them in January. But since this is November, and if it was December, I would say the same. The Chiefs will get their first loss in Western New York. I haven't picked against them yet. I will now. I'd see the Bills. I think they'll play probably one of the best games this season. And I think they will force Mahomes to play one of the worst. And you mentioned why I believe that. Mahomes having to throw for about 300 yards and to have the running game to go with it. I'm seeing one of the two possibly happening. And if it's only one that shines over the other, the Bills have this game. So that's how I see it. I think the Bills will take this game and give the Chiefs their first loss on the season.
Hey, who's giving them the business?
All right, the Sunday night game, which, it's like a type of matchup. Cincinnati Bengals, they're 4-6. They travel all the way to LA and they play the Chargers at 6-3. NBC will take that kickoff at opening kickoff. I'm sorry, will be at 8:20. NBC will carry the coverage of it. Who do you have in this one?
I think this is going to surprise you a little bit. I think this game is going to be a little closer than what you expect because the Bengals are a better team than what their record demonstrates. And the Chargers are a better team than what they were last year. They're kind of balanced out to where I think maybe the Bengals might have a little bit more talent, but they're not coached that great, like you were saying with Zach, with old Zach. Okay. Now, when you look at the other side, the Chargers probably collectively don't have as much talent as the Bengals because the Bengals were just in the Super Bowl a few years ago.
Correct.
All right. But they have the leadership that the Bengals need.
Yes,
so it kind of balances itself out a little bit. So with that being said, I feel like this game is going to surprise you as far as it's going to be close. It's going to be competitive. And if the Bengals had a little bit better coaching, like what you were talking about earlier, I would have them winning this game on the road. and improving to
Yeah.
5-6. But because they are in LA, because the Chargers have been getting better each week, it feels like they've been improving. If Herbert does what he continues to do and continues to manage the game well, no turnovers, they can get their running game going, even if it takes both, Edwards and J.K. Dobbins to both collectively have 50 yards apiece, to collectively have 100 rushing yards to establish the run. I'm
Right.
all for it, like I did this past week. If they have to do that and Herbert doesn't have any turnovers and plays game manager, they win this game.
Right.
However, if they don't do that well enough, the Bengals will make them pay for their mistakes, and they will win this if you give them the opportunity to do that. But I feel like based on the way that the Chargers are 6-3 at this point, they're going to continue to improve. They're going to get to 7-3. The Bengals will fall to 4-7, and that's how I see this night game going.
Okay. Yeah, that's actually how I see it going too. This Bengals team is really talented, but I'm starting to see. It's funny. I'm starting to see this Bengals team like I started to see how the Chargers team was in 2022, where they have all the talent in the world, but the coach gets in the way of it. And now the Bengals have all the talent in the world in most places, but the coach gets in the way of it. And unfortunately, I think he's going to get in the way of this game too, going with analytics and go for on the fourth down when he shouldn't. Not taking points, but just moving the ball downfield. Yeah, I think the Bengals, unfortunately, they will have that reputation of being better than their record, even more so, because I think they're going to take the L, and the Chargers will go to 7-3 on Sunday night. Well, post your comments as to who you think who's going to win in Week 11. It'd be interesting to see what y'all think, and thank you for those who participated in the chat when this was going on live. But I think we have something else to award. I can't remember.
Total football talk.
Oh, yeah, that's right. No, it's not Christmas yet. We haven't even gotten to Thanksgiving, but it is time for Snowflake of the Week. And for his, Drew, all yours.
I really want to give my Snowflake of the Week to Aaron Charles Rodgers. I really do. I really want to give it to Aaron Rodgers, but I can't. I just can't, because even though he himself had 151 yards and a lost fumble, and they lost the game at 34-6, there was another performance that was even worse that deserves the spotlight for the Snowflake of the Week.
Wow.
And this was a quarterback for America's team. He didn't play like an American. He played like a dumpster pelican. So you can put the N at the end of it, the A-N, but he wasn't American. He was Pelican is what he did in this game. And I have to look at America's quarterback himself, even though it wasn't Dak Prescott, the man you're paying a lot of money to. For America's team, whether you're second string or third string, it's next man up. You should be ready. Lead the charge for your team. Okay? Yeah, I'm looking at you, Cooper Rush. 13 of 23. Now, that stat isn't horrible. Okay?
No, it's not.
That stat isn't horrible. It's the next stat. Usually when somebody has 13 of 23, they have 225 yards.
Mm-hmm.
It's made it 45 passing yards. 45. That's it.
Utterly
13
amazing.
completions. It amazes me how terrible you were in this game. Okay. On top of that, you had 2 carries. Usually when you have 2 carries, you might be able to muster up a few yards. Yeah, he couldn't even get a few. He got a couple. 2 carries for 2 yards. Okay. Then it gets even worse. Cooper had 45 yards on 13 attempts completed. Yes. But you know what else he did, Cole? He had 2 fumbles.
Oh, no.
So when you look at that for what it is, when you look at the fact again that he still completed 13 passes out of 23 attempts, and he had 45 passing yards. I'm baffled. I cannot remember the last time somebody had that many completions. 13 completions. Incomplete. Couldn't even complete 50 yards. For that reason alone, you are my snowflake of the week, Cooper Rush.
Oh my gosh. Bravo on that one. That was beautiful. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. Cooper Rush. Yeah. And to think, Cowboys fan was saying, he's actually better than Dak Prescott. You're not saying that now. Okay. I mean, I could think of many different reasons. Look, I could go with the Bears offensive line. You should not allow 9 sacks on any defensive front, but you allowed it to the Patriots defensive front. But I can't talk because the Texans allowed 8 last Thursday against the Jets. Let me see. I could, but I'm not going to go there. I could be petty and award anything of this nature to the Titans. I'm not going to. I could award it to Will Lutz for getting the game winning field goal blocked from 35 yards. I came close, but I have to pick Mac Jones. Yes, the backup quarterback of the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I'm doing it not because of 14 to 22, not because of 111 yards, not because of 5 carries or 8 yards of a touchdown, not because of the lost fumble, and not because of one of those interceptions that he threw. It's for the other interception he threw. That's right. I'm awarding you this snowflake of the week because you threw one interception into the waiting arms of Cameron Bynum, where he had to perform that hideous ray gun celebration. The sad part is he actually looked better. He actually looked better than Ray Gun when he was performing in the end zone. How dare you throw a pass so bad that you had us harken back to one of the most ignominious moments in the Olympics history that took place only 2 months ago. Oh my gosh. Well, yes, Mike Jones, you were my snowflake of the week because you had to have someone give you a ray gun turnover celebration. Goodness gracious. Your thoughts are?
How both of us are savage for picking backup quarterbacks for the snowflake of the week. And mainly I did it just so I can click this button one more time.
This has been yet another Beating a Dead Horse presentation.
That was great.
Yeah, it was. Oh my gosh. Oh my. Well, more things underway. We'll be right back. Goodness gracious. Oh, you gotta love it.
Later, the post game. But coming up next, the 2-minute drill. This is Total Football Talk. Comey Media Incorporated. Creating.
And we're back because we're at the end of the show anyway.
Really?
Yeah. Let's wrap this thing up.
Really? Okay. All right.
As long as it's one.
Well, as you can see, you have a grumpy person who wants to control things. We're at the post game. And this is where we give our final thoughts for the week. And for Drew's thoughts, I will turn the floor over to him.
Well, you guys, we've now gone through our 10th week in the NFL. You know, things are looking great here. You know, for certain teams, things are looking pretty bad if you're a Cowboys fan right now. Sorry, not sorry. But the one thing that we do have to look forward to this upcoming weekend is the Grey Cup is here for the CFL. It is finally here. We covered the majority of the season on this show right here on Total Football Talk, to the point to where when the NFL came back, We have a spinoff show on Fridays, 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern time, called Total Football Talk Extra, with Ryan McCarthy. Comes in, talks with me on some CFL. This week we'll still be doing the same thing, but we'll be reviewing this past weekend's divisional finals, East and West. My Rough Riders made it that far. But if you want to see how much further or lack thereof they did after that, you're going to have to tune in this Friday, 5:05 p.m. Eastern time, as we will be previewing the Grey Cup, reviewing the previous division finals, and then we have next week's episode to review the Grey Cup, along with some other things that we'll probably be doing for some other weeks ahead. Total Football Talk Extra will continue. I just wanted to make sure I got that announcement out there. I did discuss this with Ryan this past Friday, but there are some creative things that I have, especially reviewing the Monday night NFL game, since we don't really get an opportunity to do that on Total Football Talk here because of the timing in which we record this show. That we do it live and we put it on other networks, radio networks, also BS3 Network. Shout out to you guys for picking us up this week. I wanted to make sure I got that out there. Cole will be working on getting that version over to you, I guess however you guys work that out, but just wanted to make sure that I visually and audio wise said something about that, because I hadn't had a chance to do that. But a lot of things been going on in the game of football. A lot of things going on with us here, continuing to make moves to get some more outreach on this program to many other platforms. But football, it's like Christmas each and every week, especially when your team is playing well. My team played well this past week. They ended up losing, but I can't get mad at them because of where they're at in this point in the year. Very, very positive for you to be a Commanders fan at this point. I mean, look, not many other teams have a wrestling style t-shirt like this with Jaden Daniels and the People's Elbow. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
You gotta take it for what it is. Still enjoying it for what it is, still enjoying life, loving it. But everybody, hopefully you enjoyed your past weekend of football. Hopefully you enjoyed this upcoming week. The election is now over, so we don't have to hear about that noise every single day, every single week. We can focus on the holidays now and the other things that are important. The past few months and the heated debates are now over within that realm. Let's get back to focusing on football. Let's get back to focusing on us individually and how we can better ourselves each day and better the people around us.
All right. I appreciate that. And you led into what I was going to actually say. So thank you, sir. Appreciate that.
Nice.
Well, yeah. You heard me in the beginning of the show reference Drew as the White Jackie Robinson. That is because, well, it's sort of like a tongue-in-cheek reference to where we're heading, because we have been picked up by the venerable BS3 Network, and we will be debuting actually tomorrow. 2:30 p.m. Eastern, 1:30 p.m. Central is when we will be debuting on the network. And you can catch it on Roku TV via BS3, BS3TVLive.com. And of course, we still will have this be emanating from the Search Over Media YouTube channel and the Coleman Media YouTube channel as well. That is not stopping. And of course, all the radio places where we already are, that also is not stopping. We're just adding on to the empire. But besides that, and thank you, Ben, and thank you, Ivan, for ingratiating this platform into the network. I was just thinking about how now here we are. We are now in the 11th week of the season, and November is a real strange time in terms of NFL coverage and NFL happenings, because normally you start to see the wheat getting separated from the chaff, and you're not quite ready for the home stretch yet. That normally now takes place like a little bit before Christmas, maybe like the 2 weeks before then. And that's when you start to look at, okay, well, yeah, the playoffs is a month from now. Let's see who is going to be the team that is in route for the bye. Let's see who's going to be the other division winners. Let's see who is in contention for playoff runs. So we're not quite there yet, but we're also at the spot where it's like, okay, this season is new, and we're starting to see trends form. And to me, the three trends that we're seeing forming is the Chiefs. They're winning the way that they win, and it doesn't matter how, and it's not going to be pretty, but they're going to grind out victories. And now that they've made it an art into doing it, and they haven't lost a game since Christmas Day, it just lets you know that they know how to win any type of game, no matter what. You have the Lions, who they just now are starting to learn how to grind out wins, because now they have one against the Vikings and one against the Texans. Oh, and they can route you too, and they can just simply make you look silly on the offensive line. Wonderful offensive line, by the way. And then you have the Ravens, who, when they actually commit to Derrick Henry, they are dangerous. But when they don't, they could be had. And when you have, I think, those types of trends happening, then you start to see things. And then, of course, then there's the also rans, the Bills, the Eagles. The 49ers want to be, but they're not quite there yet. The Packers, same. And over on the AFC side, well, I mean, the Chargers, are they ready to even threaten for a playoff spot? Who knows? But the trends are there, and we're starting to see the wheat being separated from the chaff. And as each week goes by, it gets exciting. And then for me, the NFL season gets very exciting when we get to see Thanksgiving games. So I hope you enjoy wherever you watch your stuff, however you watch it, because the NFL is going to get only better from here.
As long as it's one. It's great. I love it. I hope it actually is recording. Listening to it.
All right, sir. Any final words before we let the tribe go, sir?
Another great week of football. Another great week of football coverage with my guy right here. 63 episodes are in the books. 10 episodes are in the books of Total Football Talk Extra as of now. So we are approaching number 75 next week between both productions collectively of episodes done together. This has been a lot in a year, but it's been great. It's been fun. Look forward to next week already.
Yeah, and shout out to Ryan. You've actually become a third member of the crew, so we totally appreciate all of what you do, and the knowledge that you have of the sport, because we definitely don't take the knowledge you have of the CFL lightly at all.
Absolutely.
Now, if you want to find my brother Drew, all you got to do is look onto so many of these social media platforms.
Go to work.
_media on Instagram, _media on Twitter or X, the underscore Sertoba on TikTok, and of course, Sertoba Media on YouTube. And if you want to find yours truly, all you have to do is go into Floco.page, floco.com/page/host Cole Johnson. That's Floco.com/page/host Cole Johnson. Well,
do less work.
That is all the time we have. We are so thankful that you have been on the ride with us. Thank you for liking, thank you for sharing, thank you for subscribing, and thank you for hitting that notification bell so you can catch anything and everything that comes from the Sertoba Media YouTube channel or the Coleman Media YouTube channel. We appreciate you. We love you. For Drew Willingham, I'm Cole Johnson, here to say in parting, as we always do, in life, just like a tackle, keep your head up. And as always, remember, you got to play until the whistle blows.
And as always, stay safe out here in these streets.